it can become a very enjoyable internal game of competing with yourself as to how quickly can I improve my situation. Some people would rather rely on the banks, and some people would rather rely on the government to be the backbone of their operation. And the infinite banking concept is very different. It's more around financial sovereignty, financial self-sustainability, where a person could just experience a lot more control.
Welcome to the Weaning podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacey.
Hey, we are so glad that you are leaning in on our next conversation with us today. And we are just going to be getting into one of our most favorite subjects, and it's relevant for this time of year. So, Lacey, why don't you just let us know what we're going to be chatting about today?
Fall weaning and shipping. So it is a super busy time on farms and ranches. Everybody's weaning their calves. They're shipping, they're preg checking, they're shipping yearlings, selling dry cows. So cows that aren't bred, then they're getting sold. And so it just brings up a whole host of ideas in our money brains about how can we maximize every single dollar that is coming in to your operation this time of year. Because ranchers are unique in the sense when you sell those calves in the fall, well, you don't sell them again until next fall. So you have to be very strategic with what you do with your money as a rancher because it has to last the whole year. And so how can we maximize every single dollar that's coming in this time of year?
Right. And so although I did not grow up in this world and I definitely do not live this ranching lifestyle, one of the things that I can do as I talk to the different ranchers that I have spoken to over the last few years is really pay attention and listen to the experience and tune into all the things. You know, if I did my very, very best to put myself in your guys' shoes, I often think about there has to be a lot of pre-planning that goes in place. And, you know, you asked the question around how do you be strategic to manage all of these expenses that go in and out. I often think, well, you know, when the topic of conversation comes around to how are you managing your cash flow? And quite often one of the biggest financial tools that are used amongst both ranchers and farmers is their operating expense line of credit, which really helps to help float the costs in between. And, you know, this time of year, November comes around. And so I think that the other pieces that I've really listened in on is just, this is an exciting time of year because, you know, you're finally getting paid. And at the same time, there's this kind of bittersweetness about how much of it will have to leave. You know, yes, this big paycheck comes in, but it's a relief to have it come in because then you know a lot of the expenses that you have been carrying personally are now going to get paid off. And so it's like, yes, then that sigh of relief. And hopefully all along the way, it seems to me from just listening in, it's like there's so many different things that that really dictate how much profit, like how much you have left. You know, you might start off in the season thinking that it's going to be a good year, but then something else happens that you may not even think that's going to happen. And then boom, your profits go down. And then, oh, maybe the cost of, you know, the beef changes or the cost of feed changes or.
Yeah, you often hear producers say, oh, when I get my calf check, it looks like I'm doing really good for a couple of days until I pay all the bills. And then it's like dwindles. And so we want to be here to help eliminate that pain point, to make it a little bit easier to swallow in the sense of we want you to feel like that you have it for longer than a couple days. And so it takes strategic planning and it takes thinking outside of the box on, okay, we have this money coming in. We expect it every fall. We need a plan and an action plan of how we're going to maximize it and how we're going to keep more of those dollars for ourselves rather than see it come in from the sale of the calves to 2 days later, it's gone paying bills.
So let me ask you something, Lacey. I mean, being that you and Reed are a ranching family, tell me what were some of the things that went on for you and Reed that basically had you look at the infinite banking concept? Because you basically have been on the other side of the coin not more than 4 years ago before you decided that the infinite banking concept and this particular type of financial lifestyle was something that both of you felt could be the light at the end of the tunnel and a solution for the pain points that, that all of you experience.
Mm-hmm. So for us, it was when we read Mary Jo's book, it was the possibility of being able to run what we hope is every dollar eventually through a policy and having purchasing power within our own family bank rather than, every fall you sell the yearlings, but then we're buying calves back a month later to keep them over the winter and put them on grass in the summer. So for us, it was like, hey, we could be using our own dollars to purchase the cattle that we need for the next year. For us, that was, or for Reed, I would say, he's the one that saw that opportunity first of like, we could take back the power from the lenders and do this ourselves, make our money compound. So it's compounding, but we're also able to use it to take back that purchasing power, not using the bank's money.
Now, as you're saying this may make sense, like compounding and we'll make our money compound for us. Now, I think like if the listener on the other side has never heard or even read Becoming Your Own Banker or Farming Without the Bank, they may not catch on to what you're really saying or fully appreciate what you're saying. So maybe we can, I think there is something called the curse of knowledge, which you have put the time in, you've read the book several times, you've been hanging out with me. And so you know what that means 100%. So what does it truly mean to the listener on the other end who hasn't read the book? What are they truly getting out of it? What problem are we solving by putting our money in a place where it compounds for us?
We're relying less on the banks to be our purchasing power. So what we would be charged interest from the bank and paying them interest, so they're making money on us, we're paying that back to ourselves. So we're grabbing that interest back from the bank and we are practicing being the banker instead of going to the lending institutions for what we need.
So what I would add to that, something that is very strikingly different and a unique feature to what this is that singular part, money's coming in, but then very quick turnaround, money is going out. Question is, what are you going to do? Is there a possibility of doing something with that money while we have it to make it work for us before it leaves our hands again? Right? So like, as much as you quickly earned it, it will quickly leave. And if there isn't somewhere where you can actually park it, where it's kind of like saying, okay, you have, $100,000 for like a week. And if the bank was to have that $100,000, they are turning around and they are lending it out to someone else and earning interest on it. Whereas if you had $100,000 for 7 days in your bank account, maybe you might have a high interest savings account and maybe it might just be like, I don't know, 1.5%, 2%. So you're earning 2% for that 7 days and then it like takes off again, but then you're no longer earning it. So like basically you only have that limited time of where your money is working for you for that 7 days. And then once that money is out of your account, there's $0. Right. So what I mean by like compounding for you for the rest of your life, taking advantage of the money that you have before it leaves the doors. How can you take that $100,000, even though you only have it for 7 days, but if you run it through a completely different structure, a different warehouse that has different terms and conditions that will allow you to have that money work for you for the rest of your life in multiple different ways. That's not really just about money, but even working to increase your estate value, right, upon death. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, it's not changing the objective. I mean, money is still going to come into your account and money is still going to leave your account. But what if you could take in that 7 days and make it work for you for the rest of your life without having to invest it in the marketplace?
Right.
I mean, that is something that should really turn your head, right?
Oh, yeah. Like really make you stop and ask yourself, is it possible? And yeah, we're here to tell you that it's possible. It's possible for you to take that calf check, put it in a place where it's going to earn that compound growth, but that you also have access to it. So even though you're using it, it's still growing on the amount that you put in there. So that's how it's different from putting in a high interest savings account or, having it come into your operating account at the bank and it's gone in a few days when you pay all of your lenders. That's what intrigued us and got us on board with implementing this concept into our lives because it's just different and made sense to us.
And so I think one of the key things to really note here is one of the things that we're quite used to is when we go to the bank, they just have different rules available to them, right? So quite often, if you need money from the bank, it's not like you guys don't know. There's a process to it all. And you have to jump through the hoops. You have to also be caught up to date with filing for your taxes. And you have to be able to show a number of different things before, like basically attempt to prove to them, like you don't actually really need their money, but they want leverage and they definitely want their interest payments. And they have the ability to lend you more money than what they actually have because they're legally able to. I mean, we can't do that personally because that would be counterfeiting, but the banks can certainly do that on a legal basis. However, if we want to have the financial control, because like the banks have financial control and they have the ability to collect interest, you too can have that same ability at the me and you level, just like Nelson taught us in the Becoming Your Own Banker book. It is, however, just taking the time to understand how to create that for yourself. And it is not as instantaneous as it would be to get the money like you would at the bank. So I would say the more that a person can take time now to really learn about it, the sooner you're going to be able to implement that. Because you can't just take the operating expenses that you're using now, like maybe you're at 50,000, like depending on the size of your operation, 50,000 to, $5 million, $10 million, right? Because you guys all have different sizes of operations. It doesn't just happen overnight. It happens over a course of potentially 2 or 3 or 4 years before you're able to become self-sustainable with being able to finance all your operating expenses. But it is possible. And you know how time goes by so fast. So
it's possible and it's worthwhile. And I always go back to that. Anything that's worthwhile takes time. And this, in my opinion, it's worthwhile. When you look at the numbers specifically geared toward your picture, it's worthwhile to put in the hard work and to put in the time because you get to the other side and it's lovely.
So one of the things that I ought to say is that, it's knowing that it doesn't happen overnight and being able to execute doing this for yourself if it's what you end up choosing to do. The best way to really assess how quickly it can be done is there's no faster way than to just really sit down and have a conversation with us because everyone has such a unique situation for them, and being able to identify what's a good starting point is different for everybody. And the sooner you get started, the better.
Absolutely. I always think too, like if you're even a little bit competitive, it's like, oh yes, like I'm getting one up on that bank, or I'm gonna like walk in there and I don't need their loan. Like, so if you're at all competitive like me, then maybe that plays a part, how you implement it or how quickly you implement it after you read the book.
Yeah. And I appreciate really what you're saying, because it can almost become like a very enjoyable, like an internal game of like competing with yourself as to how quickly can I improve my situation. And don't get me wrong, like, the banks, they're not going anywhere. They're still going to be doing well years to come because you know what? Not everyone is going to get this. And sometimes maybe even the values around what this is may not even resonate for most people. Like some people would rather rely on the banks and some people would rather rely on the government to be the backbone of their operation. And the infinite banking concept is very different. It's more around financial sovereignty, financial self-sustainability, where a person could just experience a lot more control. And, we talked about it in earlier podcasts where control and convenience are not the same thing. Some people may not like going about pursuing this method just for the pure fact. Actually, I'm not wrong when I say that either. Like, because some people are afraid of change, right?
Absolutely.
What I meant to say was pure fact, the pure fact of just, it's not convenient. You really do have to go through a growing pain to make this work. But once you have gone through the growing pain, it's amazing being able to experience the reduced amount of stress because you're not that slave to the lender anymore. And knowing that if you really needed to, you could use the bank as plan B as opposed to plan A.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that's huge for me, like in my own little competitive head with myself and always trying to improve our current situation. It's like, yeah, I'm a tad bit competitive and everything, but it just makes sense. So
I know we're kind of like hovering on that longer time, but I do have another layer to add around how this is like a way to compound your dollar. Not just that it will compound and grow for you for the rest of life, but the same dollar that you're putting into this contract does more than one thing. It doesn't just compound and grow for you for the rest of your life, but the multiple use will also allow you to grow your legacy for what you're leaving behind at the same time. And this matters. This should matter. Like some people don't care about insurance, but for most ranchers and farmers out there, you guys have a lot of debt.
I just said this morning.
Yeah.
Asset rich and cash flow limited. I said that last night or this morning because it can be true while you're getting started or while you're, maybe you're in expansion. We can look like we're asset heavy and the cash is a bit on the lower side, right? And so absolutely building that legacy, making that dollar do more than one job, like they're all ingredients to what we want in the end.
The legacy part that I wanted to expand on was more so about the fact that when you have a lot of debt, you need that death benefit, right? That death benefit to cover off any debts in case you prematurely graduate to heaven. And also, because this year, even though it hasn't necessarily passed yet, if you haven't already been in tune with it, the capital gains has changed. So therefore, depending on how your legacy is, like how you set things up, or if you're still in the process, which most ranchers and farmers are, needing more death benefit is going to help solve some pretty major potential issues, right? Because that has shifted. Anyhow, I digress. What's the next step, Miss Lacey?
Okay, so in our book, the Canadian version of Farming Without the Bank, we have added in there for you 4 case studies. So in these case studies, they can pertain to 4 different situations or scenarios that could very well be you right now or in the future. So go to our website, rancherway.com, and get your book. So you can find that in the show notes. You can find links to the books. But also in those case studies, there is an option you can interact with us. So there's links you can click or go to on your phone or your computer, and really you can apply this to your situation or a situation that you see yourself in the future. Really dig deep and be like, hey, how can this work for me? Or how could this help us? How could this improve our operation? And so highly, highly recommend that you grab the book and give it a read. It's not going to take you very long. And we appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Questions, comments, feedback, you know where to find us.
So glad you leaned in with us on the Weaning podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.